If I do something I love, then I will never have to work and I will skip this whole dynamic that I can't really see myself in. My dad said if that could be done, everyone would do it.
Today, I'm talking to Nico Smat, co-founder and CEO of the Daniel Allen project, currently the leading breathwork training in the German market. What I admire about Nico is how seriously he takes his own desires and how quickly he moves when an opportunity shows up.
I went home, but in that moment, I was so clear that this is what I want to do. I just texted the HR lady and I was like, if you want to have me on that internship, I'm going to pause my studies for half a year. Like, I want to do this. They said yes. One of the best decisions I ever made.
That kind of move shows up again and again in Nico's story.
Rejection really isn't a big deal. What wouldn't have been okay is missing the chance. That would have sucked big time.
And Nico is just as strategic about how he designs his life as he is about his career.
Every element in my lifestyle design happened exactly like that. Heard about Chiang Mai, planned to go there, went there, fell in love, got a house.
Nico faced the conflict many curious generalists know. The external pressure to specialize against the internal pull to keep learning.
Almost felt guilty, like I was like, shit, I'm not really specializing.
What I love is how Nico stopped fighting that instinct and built his career around it.
There exists a role for people just like me who like to have very diverse skills and like to do very diverse tasks, and it's
We know each other through my wife, Roxy, and what I find really interesting is that every time she talks to you, like maybe every 6 months or so, you seem to be doing something new, and somehow it always feels a little bit more impressive and a little bit more interesting than before. When you and Roxy met, you were still employed, doing marketing, then you started going more into design and Webflow. You become a freelancer, then you became like business mentor for coaches. Now you're building this very exciting big project with Daniel, a person who's really good at what he does and someone that you really admire. So I find that super interesting because your story is not this classic linear standard path. You seem to be creating a career in life more in the direction that you want, but also like you're always doing these new roles, but you take so much from the last role and become better at the next one. So maybe to start very simply, how would you describe what you currently do?
You're asking at a nice moment because right now it's a little bit more clear than usual. I guess you could call it the CEO or co-founder of the Daniel Allen project. Company is called Out of Breath. So basically he is the personal brand. He does the trainings, like he provides all the content and I do the backend stuff, marketing, website, and also some like leadership roles recently.
Do you want to say a little bit about what's this project about? Who is Daniel Allen? So for someone who doesn't know him.
Daniel, when I met him, was already doing breath work. I always explain it like it's a little bit like hypnosis, but instead of through speech, the altered state of consciousness is induced through breath. So in a sense, it's a therapy method. Works really well with trauma and unconscious material because of the way this type of breathing affects the brain and different centers in the brain. Yeah, when I met him, he was already doing that for a long time. He had already trained a couple of people, and basically together we started doing group trainings. And that project has really taken off. So now we train 150 people per year in this method of therapy.
I find it's also so interesting that, it's breath work. It's like, in a way, everybody knows how to breathe, but you're teaching definitely something new, but that there's so much demand in that you're able to create these amazing lives and help so many people. Doing that is fantastic.
I hear that kind of often, even from people who know breath work, because the breathing techniques are actually rather simple. The whole training focuses on how to guide someone through a deep process like that, because it's usually quite a bit more intense than a regular coaching session. It's more akin to what you would expect from a psychedelic.
I did one session a couple months back, and it definitely felt like a journey. Like I was navigating, I had memories I didn't have in a long time. I was transported back to my childhood and definitely very, very extremely interesting.
It's potent.
So right now you're sort of like the co-founder, or it seems like the Joker. You do like everything that's required to, scale this business and keep it running. How did you start? When you first started thinking about career, where were you and what were you thinking about?
In the late stages of my high school time, when decisions have to be made about what to study. I was like 18, 19, but then you have this huge time horizon to consider for what career choice you make. Back then, I was already interested in personal development and experimenting with things like magic mushrooms. And so I had this very faithful magic mushroom trip where I was lying on my best friend's bed, and it just hit me really, really hard in that moment that this 9 to 5 life that I'm also seeing my dad and everyone around me basically live, I will not be able to do it. I will I become depressed. Like I just couldn't see myself go down that path. But also I didn't really have any alternative yet. Like I didn't understand what other options would be there for me. And so that was the first time this topic really started to hit me, and I started to do some research into the whole topic of purpose. I knew what I don't want, but I didn't yet know what I want. So I developed kind of like the idea, not a super original idea, but basically the idea is, well, if I do something I love, then I will never have to work, and I will skip this whole dynamic that I can't really see myself in. And my dad said it couldn't be done, by the way. My dad said if that could be done, everyone would do it, which seemed rather plausible to me at the moment. Like that really instilled some doubts. But anyway, I started finding the right people to listen to, and basically that cemented that idea of living a life purpose. Still had no idea what the topic or the content, like what would be the thing that I would do. So I did something that in retrospect, I really love my past self for, which is I thought to myself, well, I need to study something and I don't yet know what I want to do, but it will probably be some kind of business. So I'll just study business and figure out the content of what I'll do, like at some later point. And that's exactly what I did. And that turned out to be the right decision.
By the way, my dad said the same thing. They see the worry of, you're constantly worried about what you're gonna do with your life and always have the standard of if it's gonna make you happy or not, and you're not gonna choose. And but I think it's also like a different moment, right? For them, the options were more limited. Things seemed a little bit simpler, but also more limited. And now there are so many jobs. You can choose and you can do all sorts of things. With the generations, your standards rise. At the beginning, you want to have food on the table, and then you want to have a nice house, and then you want to have a nice car, and then you want your children to go to a good school. And now we're to the point where we want to have also a great job that fulfills us and makes us feel something. So I definitely see that part as well. And I think it's difficult for them to see that. But that's why I'm doing this podcast, because there are definitely people that love what they do.
That just brought up like an interesting, somewhat philosophical question in me, which is like, are we entitled to want that? Are we too entitled to say, well, I want a life, I want a career driven by purpose, something that really fulfills me? Should we be more humble?
I never feel that way, because what does the world get from someone who is sad in his job or is not excited or energized by what he does? I never see it. Me being excited in what I do doesn't take away from anybody. So I don't see that. Why do you get that question in your mind?
It's just the critique I hear of millennials and Gen Z that we have such high standards for our jobs, and now we can't be asked to do this and that. I actually see it exactly like you. It's a drive to contribute in a way, isn't it? We want job fulfillment, but a lot of the fulfillment comes from the meaning we generate from the jobs. It's not purely selfish. The selfishness to long for fulfillment and the contribution, they align.
Well, the way I see entitlement is, or the way I associate it, is that you want something, but you expected to receive it without paying for it or without putting the effort required to get it. And the way I see it is more like it's your life and you decide the things that you want, but you are expected to pay for that in whatever form the payment is required. Maybe it's time, maybe it's effort, maybe it's money, maybe it's a lot of years of investment without seeing results. But if you're willing to do that, then who is it to say that you can't have it? So the distinction is if you're willing to put in the effort and you're willing to pay that, or if you just expected to receive it somehow without paying for it.
Yeah, that is so true. And that is so important. And that is also the difference between, just being miserable about like your work and your job and complaining, and being miserable, but actually taking the steps to change something. So yeah, I guess the listeners are very much on the second one of those.
I would definitely very much encourage that. which leads to the next point. Like yesterday we were talking and you said one thing that helped you was knowing what it is that you want and thinking a lot about that helped you make a critical decision to find your first job. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
During my time at uni, it was a pretty broad study course. A lot of the stuff didn't really interest me that much, but I found out that marketing, and especially digital marketing, is cool. It's basically like a breadcrumb trail. Now that I see it like that, it's basically I followed the breadcrumb trail of my interests, of my passions. So the next breadcrumb was within this field, marketing. Okay, so let's see if I can get a job in marketing. And I did, and it really sucked. I was in England for half a year doing marketing for a large international orthopedics company. They sold hip and knee implants mainly, which is interesting, but just like the company and the environment was just like horribly anti-creative. Back in Germany, I tried to get a working student job in digital marketing, and I found something that looked really interesting, like a young company, which would later become Workwise. I applied, went for the trial day.
Were you still studying by then, or were you looking
I was
for...
still studying. Yeah,
okay.
I was in the middle of my studies. I wanted a working student job, like
Right.
basically just something to gain some experience and also like make some money. Because until then, I was just like doing jobs here and there, but nothing that would really add to my career. And I was just blown away by the vibe. First of all, everyone was really young, like in their mid-20s, basically. And everyone seemed like they are there voluntarily and they're like working on stuff they care about. It's like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I want to work in this environment. And also something that I remember was that the job description said 10% of your paid time for learning.
Oh, right.
Like you get 10% of your paid time for learning. And that was actually true. So they provided books, courses and stuff. So they kept that promise. And that seemed like to me, like that is a company just philosophically that makes a lot of sense for my personality and what I'm looking for. But then they told me, well, I'm not really qualified because I didn't really have any background in digital marketing. I'm not really qualified for a working student position, but they would offer me an internship, but the internship is full time. Mm-hmm. And I was still studying. And so I went home, but in that moment, I was so clear that this is what I want to do. So I just texted the HR lady. And I was like, hey, guys, like if you want to have me on that internship, I'm going to pause my studies for half a year. Like I want to do this. And they said yes. And I paused my studies. One of the best decisions I ever made in that moment, to be like, hey, this is a priority now over being done studying half a year earlier.
Yeah.
In retrospect, that half a year couldn't have been invested any better. Like
absolutely.
Yeah.
Why did you say that? What did you learn in that 6 months?
Not just in that 6 months, but that was also the foundation for later becoming the working student and then becoming a full-time employee. So I was working quite closely with the founder, and also I was giving a lot of freedom. And later, especially, they paid for a lot of coaching and mentoring because I had a somewhat critical role for the company at the time, but I didn't really have the background to fill it. So they decided actually to build me up instead of just, letting me go and finding someone else. And I'm eternally grateful for that decision. This changed so many good things in my life are because of that company and that job. And I learned performance marketing, which is to this day one of my most valuable skills because it's so hard to attain. Because you need budget to practice. Most other skills like design, development, which I attained basically since then, you can practice like in a vacuum basically. But to learn performance marketing, you are burning budget. So the budget needs to come from somewhere. But also like working so closely with the founder and just seeing in general how they set everything up and how it grew. I was, I think, like the 50th-ish employee, but back then mostly working students and interns. And when I left, we were 250-ish employees and mostly full-time. So I grew with the company a lot and I saw how they think and how they create systems, and I'm using just mindsets and things I picked up from there almost every day in how I now lead Art of Breath. So like the Daniel Allen company, how I set up the system, how I navigate projects, that extremely valuable.
I'm very curious because I think you're a very strong self-learner. Is there anything that you do to be able to learn faster or to pick up these skills by yourself?
I'm just very curious and I really like learning. I think this is something that is kind of hard to fake, or even like fake is a kind of negative word, but emulate. I think you can cultivate curiosity. If you're putting your attention on, I want to cultivate curiosity, like intention is a very strong force. But for me, that always came kind of naturally. Like I just love picking up new, like, the Wikipedia rabbit holes, you probably know those, of like, like being interested in some topic and then just starting to read and clicking links and reading more. And like that is the most kind of like recreational, innocent form of it. Watching myself in the process of becoming good at something is inherently very joyful for me, and there is very little resistance actually at this point. I kind of noticed this very starkly when I went ice skating with my ex-girlfriend. Interesting story. So we both went ice skating, both like kind of, good enough to move forward, and we were there for I think 2 hours. She was like going in circles. She was just like enjoying herself. That was like her thing. But I like immediately, like I was going a little bit straight and I was like, all right, now I want to figure out how to do tighter curves. So I started experimenting with that. I'm like, okay, now I need to learn how to stop. That was the first thing actually. Okay, I need to practice how to stop. So I practiced stopping at ever faster speeds, and I fell on my butt a couple of times. Like watching my motor system also like pick up the skill, it's just so joyful for me. And so when we went home, I was actually much better than her after 2 hours, but also I had some bruises. So I think it's largely like a personality thing of this joy of picking up new skills and learning things.
What I see in there, I identify a lot, and it took me a while to figure out, but now I really pay attention to what energizes me. I always pay close attention to that. I feel is a great indication of what kind of jobs I will like and what kind of jobs I will hate. So when I know, or in general, what I should be doing more of, I get super energized when I get to learn something new, when I am in a new environment, or I get to do a course, learn a new skill. And I see that a lot in you. And so that's how I finally figured out that's my superpower. If I do the things that energize me, what energizes me is learning. And so actually in my company, they figured it out also. And so they always throw Alex on the new project. Like, hey, there's this new project. Nobody knows how to do it. Do you want to do it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
nobody knows how to do it. Those are like the golden words, like, oh yes, I can figure out how to do it. And then also, but the thing is, it is a double-edged sword, because also once I have figured out how to do something, it quickly becomes a lot less interesting. So I have to apply more discipline at sticking with something and not picking up the new thing just because.
How did you deal with that? Sometimes being a generalist feels a weakness, but then you told me that you see it now like a strength. How did you acquire that mindset?
Well, mostly by experience, to be honest. Back when in that phase when I was trying to figure out, well, how do I solve this conundrum that I now have back when I was 19? Back then, everyone told you very clearly, like, pick something and become a specialist. And then people will pay you huge amounts of money to do it. And it makes sense. It's also true. But I was never really fit for that path because of this, this kind of mind I have that we just talked about. I almost felt guilty. Like I was like, shit, I'm not really specializing. I remember like vividly when your wife and I became friends the first time at Workwise, because she was doing design, and that's when I got interested in design. And so I started talking to her. I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about learning this entirely new skill that has nothing to do with anything I've done previously. And I was really doubting myself. I was like, shit, this makes no sense, But I also couldn't really stop myself. Like I was just fascinated and I wanted to learn. And so I did. And because of like the energy I brought into it, and like 2-3 months, I got my first little freelance web design gig, which was like really underpaid, but also I had no experience, so fair enough. I was also very transparent with the fact that I really don't have any experience. Back to your question, when did I figure out that being a generalist is actually a strength? Just through experience, I found out that there is a position for generalists, the entrepreneurial type position. I would call it the co-founder, which is basically what I am now also. This is probably the number one best job for a generalist. You either found something yourself, but also if you found something yourself, oftentimes if it's more of like a service-oriented business, you also have to do the thing that you're selling. I basically found someone who is able to do a thing that really inspires me and that there is a demand for. And I approached him. I was like, I like what you're doing. It's inspiring. I want to learn from you. I have some skills in marketing and business. Let's do this together. And we did. And through that, I found out like, well, there's actually a position for this specific generalist type, the guy that does like all the stuff around the actual service, especially with AI now, which is doing a lot of the craftsmanship of the actual stuff that you would before need to be specialized to do, right? You don't just get good at coding, like is something you need to be a specialist for, but now no longer. I realized at some point that no, I don't need to be a specialist. There exists a role for people just like me who like to have very diverse skills and like to do very diverse tasks. And it's basically the co-founder in a way.
It's definitely true that you get this perspective with more experience. I think it's difficult to be able to get that early on, because early on you just see your interests being all over the place and they divide you in a sense, and it makes it difficult to spend enough time in one thing. But then when you're able to do it, I think that what helped me a lot. Like when you're able to do it sequentially, so like not everything at once, but you pursue one interest long enough to pick up some skills, and then like at some point it starts getting boring, but you make sure you're good enough, and then you move to the next interest, and so on. You're able to build a stack of skill that does create something more than the sum of its parts. So that's definitely like what you say, like the co-founder. There are definitely a lot of other roles where you don't have to be the best at everything, but just like you need to know enough about many things to be able to contribute and produce enough value. It's something that does come with experience, because else you don't get to feel how it looks and how it feels like to be able to bring in design, bring in marketing, bring all these things together and see them stacked.
And eventually, like you might hand some of them off again to specialists. That's the thing. Like in the beginning, when you start a project, or like our project specifically, there was just no budget to hire a dedicated designer, a dedicated copywriter, a dedicated project manager. No, like I did everything, and Daniel did the breathwork trainings. And now a lot of the things I don't really do anymore myself, although I like to. Like I intentionally keep some of the tasks because I just enjoy doing them. I'm not only optimizing for, the bottom line, I'm still optimizing for joy. And I think over time that also shows in the bottom line.
I'm curious because you worked at Workwise, they gave you all these skills or these responsibilities. I guess there was a sense in which you could continue to have grown with the company and have continued with them, but after that, you told me that you became a freelancer. Why was that, and how did you go about doing that?
That was always the plan. And I also communicated that. I was very, very transparent with them that is something I eventually want to do. Especially when they started investing in me and my skills, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be here in 10 years, probably not even 5 years. That was still fine. And I told them very, very in advance, like long time, 10 months or so, I trained my successors. I left on very good terms. But the point is that I was always going to leave, like that was always the plan. Why did I want to leave, or why was that always the plan? Because I wanted to be self-employed, I wanted that experience, autonomy, freedom, this kind of stuff. But then also at that time, I wanted to do design and web development. And I have no formal training in design and web development. I'm entirely self-taught. And so I could see clearly like, well, this is a very flexible startup and they are going to give me all sorts of freedoms, but they're not going to hire me to, or like not even hire me. I mean, I'm already hired, but I'm hired for a specific position, right? They're not going to just have me experiment around with design just because that's now what I feel like. Interestingly enough, I actually ended up developing their website as a freelancer. Not really doing much design work, but development in Webflow. Because at some point they decided to move the blog to Webflow and everything. And I had talked so much and so enthusiastically about that tool because that's what would allow me to become a freelancer. So interestingly enough, in the end, they did actually hire me for that. Part of it was structure driven. So I wanted the structure of being self-employed and autonomous. And part of it was content driven. I wanted to do work that I would not really get the opportunity to do in any kind of corporate system, no matter how open-minded, just because I have no formal qualification.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That brings up a topic which I honestly feel is very important in career design as well, but it's not discussed enough. I think it's very important to know also like what type of lifestyle do you want to have and have a clear vision of that, and then be able to integrate that with your work. Because at the end of the day, is it life or is it work? Like, what's more important? Do you want your work to be the most important part of your life, or okay, no, work doesn't matter, it's only life that matters and what you do outside of work that matters? I don't see that way at all. I think it's an integration. Your work influences a lot how your life ends up to be, the little moments, how your mornings look like, the evenings, the weekends, the people you hang out with, and when the content of work itself, and the other way around. How did you figure out that that's the type of life that you want to have?
I realized that initially when I became self-employed, the push for content, what I said earlier, like the things I wanted to do have been more the driver than the lifestyle. I wanted to do design and I wanted to do websites and stuff. And also, mind you, at that time, I had already been working with Daniel. The moment the decision was made, we had already been working together for more than a year. So it was clear on the horizon that would become more and more important. I also wanted to do more design. So a lot of people actually in my social circle also intuitively misunderstood that, because immediately after I quit my job and became self-employed, I moved to Bali for the first time with my then girlfriend for half a year. And I think most people thought that we became self-employed to move to Bali. But it was actually the other way around. I wanted to be self-employed. And as soon as that decision was made, it was like, well, it's going to be November. Winter kind of sucks. We're going to be able to work from anywhere. Let's not work from Germany. Like, what the hell? Let's go to Bali. So that was how that really ended up happening. Now I see it a bit differently, because now also my lifestyle design has advanced, I guess. So I'm technically a digital nomad. I have a house. Like, I don't own it, but I long-term rent it in Chiang Mai in North Thailand. I just came from Vietnam. Now I'm in Bali. In a month, I'm going back to Thailand, stopping over in Kuala Lumpur for like an extended weekend. So I've gotten more into the whole lifestyle design thing. I've realized like there is places I just like a lot more. I feel more at home than Germany. I basically like to be able to skip seasons that I don't like, which is what I'm doing, like I am here basically now because in Chiang Mai they have something called burning season where the air quality is very bad, which is around this time. So I'm not there. So this kind of freedom to do this, and I've really zoomed in on the traveling part, but there's a lot more to it. For example, I like to have slow mornings. I like to meditate, stretch, read. At the moment, I'm also learning Thai, and not basically start my day at 8 a.m. And so little things like that. And there is a bunch more. The tools I use, the style of work, how I do it, and just being able to basically say, well, we are doing this project now because I think it has potential. This is really cool. Let's do it. I'm getting this and that resource that I need for it. Now I also have people who I can delegate tasks to, and just like this is exactly what you were talking about. Is this now still lifestyle design or is this work? This is where it kind of merges for me. On some days, I just don't want to have calls. because I like to do focused work, and so I'm blocking my day. There is no calls on this day. So in Kuala Lumpur, there's a motorbike race. So I wanted to try track racing, basically. It's on a Friday and a Saturday. So I'm taking Thursday, Friday off, flying via Kuala Lumpur instead of Bangkok. And that just works, right? I can make that happen. I'll just block it in my calendar. Of course, I could also take holidays as an employee, but like this whole flexibility thing and basically only being responsible for the results of my work and not really for how or when or where I do it, that is basically where lifestyle design and work meets.
Does it come to you naturally to know how you want to live, what you like, what you find fun, how you want to spend your time? Or is that something that you need to think a little bit about, or you take the mornings or the evenings or whatever to think a little bit about, well, what do I want to do next week? What do I want to do next month? What do I want to do next year?
That comes very natural to me. Like I get some impulse, basically. So motorbikes started as a necessity. I came to Bali. In Bali, if you've ever been here, scooters are just like the mode of transport. It's not really optional. So I taught myself how to ride a scooter. You don't need the license, or like there is no formal training. Like you just get on and you teach yourself how to scooter. I mean, technically you need a license, but now I have one. And I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. Like motorized two-wheeler, this is awesome. And then I wanted a bigger scooter. And at some point, I just basically followed that breadcrumb trail and was like, hey, maybe I should get a big manual bike. So I got a big manual, like a big-ish, like a small for in comparison to how large they get, but more larger than a scooter, right? And so I started doing that. I was like, wow, this is really awesome. Like, I really, really love this. And then doing this for a while, I was like, well, I want to do track riding. Like, and so I asked my Claude, hey, how can I get into track riding? He's like, hey, you know what? The weekend you wanted to fly to Chiang Mai anyway, fly via Kuala Lumpur. They have a track there. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And this is basically how I operate. Like, this is very representative of like all the things and how they happened. Mm-hmm. Like, this is just one instant, but basically every element in my lifestyle design happened exactly like that. Planned to go there, went there, fell in love, got a house.
I always like to find words for that type of learning, and the best word I've come across is like being a valuer or being value driven, like paying attention to what you find valuable, what you find worthwhile, what excites you, energizes you, and taking that seriously and investing the time in that as well. And I asked because, like, for me, it didn't come naturally. I was very focused on what I need to do and what's important and what's effective and efficient. And so I think I got myself to a point where, like, I was good, but I didn't really know what would light me up and what would make the weekends great. And so I had to pay attention. What do I find interesting? What do I find exciting? So I had to like build up that skill, that awareness. Now I am to the point where I think very similarly. For me, it's jet ski right now. I find the jet ski so fun. I just want to do it all the time. I get so excited doing that.
You said something very important, which is like taking that serious. Maybe that's the key thing, because I almost feel people don't really take their desires or values very seriously. They wouldn't go the steps to ask, like to find a track day to ride their motorbike, rent a bike and book the insurance and contact the people and make the decisions and book the flights. I think if people took these desires more seriously, they would mobilize more energy. Yeah. And then they would also come to life. That is not at all different from what we would also do in our work, right? So many people don't even consider being self-employed as an option. It's just not in their like horizon of things that could be possible for them. I think that is mostly like a downstream consequence of this not taken seriously of what you actually want, because your dad, my dad, they both told us, well, it's not really possible to, just do what you love for a living. If it were, everyone would do it. And this is like the general message you receive. It's kind of like you have to play it small is almost a little bit the message, or like the, not explicitly, but implicitly. And so people never, they don't feel empowered to research, well, how do I start a company? I couldn't deal with all the taxes and stuff. Something I heard. Couldn't deal with all the taxes. Like, bro, it's not that hard. Like, do a Google search. Now we have AI, it's even easier. Like, do a Google search and you will find out there's actually not that much that's required of you to run your own company. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, the opposite. Like it definitely
Just
has
one
a
example.
cost, but the cost, like if you really know what you want, it lights you up. Like the cost increasingly decreases in size because what you want is so
Definitely.
much more important. So, like, of course, I don't want to do taxes. Nobody wants to do taxes, but like you get to see the upside of traveling around the world. Like what you said, like I'm taking Friday and Saturday off because I can, and I don't have to ask for permission or whatever, and I get to have 2 really fun days, and then I continue working, and I have a blast at work as well. So that like when you see like that the upside, like what do I care if I have to do taxes? Like it's nothing in comparison to.
It's nothing.
This point is really, really interesting because I think a lot about happiness and research a lot that field. We always think that the relationship between success and happiness is that first you become successful and then that makes you happy. But now they're finding more and more evidence that it's the other way around. Like you're happy and you're excited, and that makes you successful. And so I'm interested in how you see that in your life personally, because the argument is not crazy. If you get pulled to things and you pursue them and you get into this loop of action and you see the results and that excites you and that motivates even more action, you're in this downstream river of action that just pulls you. You want to go that direction, so of course you develop some skills and you come better at that. And I definitely see that in my own life, and I guess that's also why the company I work for also values that, since I am the guy who likes to learn things and figure things out and do them, and so I get these exciting projects but also get rewarded for them. How do you see that in your own life?
Yeah, totally. It's exactly like you say. I actually have a very good example of something that I didn't like and I couldn't get successful with, which is growing a social media account. When I became self-employed, the taxes part wasn't like that was a sacrifice, and I was aware this is a sacrifice, but it's a rather minor part of it. I don't think I've done something where a major part of it felt like a sacrifice. But overall, I mostly just follow my joy. In a sense, I don't really feel like I'm a disciplined person. In fact, I would say I'm not a disciplined person. I just do things I like. And social media is a very good example of where I tried, like I saw strategically. So this is a part we haven't touched on yet, but basically at a certain point, people started to ask me for business advice, basically, and business mentoring, specifically people who finished our breathwork training. I was kind of an obvious person for them to ask that. And so that started to be a project. That's what I started to let go of web design and web development. That went well. And then I started also opening it for people outside of the breathwork training. And at some point I was like, well, I'm going to start a social media. I'm going to build a personal brand to acquire more customers for this, basically. Strategically, it made a lot of sense. And so I started to learn social media, which I liked because I got to learn a new thing. I did the courses, I watched the videos, I tried some stuff. At some point, I actually knew pretty well what was required of me to do it. I tried to do it, but I just couldn't. I couldn't consistently do it. And also the content that I produced was never good. And it wasn't because I didn't actually like it. I struggled with that for a while. Like I was, maybe I just have to push through. I pushed a bit. I tried this, I tried that, But at some point I just had to realize, no, like I really just don't like it. And this is a very good example, basically, of what you said, where like the happiness wasn't there and so the success wouldn't come. Whereas when I followed the happiness, the success would come more or less effortlessly. You might call it effortlessly, but because I still worked for the success, but it didn't feel like effort. It felt like doing something with joy, which I never felt for social media. It just sucks.
Yeah, I think that's such an important message because the usual way this is told is if you want to be successful, you have to be willing to make tons of sacrifices and put all these hours in where you're clearly not enjoying yourself. And you have to basically go up the mountain and just carry yourself and push yourself to get there. And I find this a much more encouraging example. Like, no, find what you find exciting and valuable. It's not just like blindly follow your passion and you will get there. No, there's some work involved. You need to do
There's
some
strategy
planning,
to it,
some
yeah.
strategy to that, some thinking, taking it seriously, and of course working on that as well. But it feels very different.
And like self-reflection, like finding the moment also where you see like, well, I could make this work, but in reality I can't because I'd just be miserable. I can see that also in the kind of sports that I like. So I don't really like any kind of endurance sports. I have a friend in mind actually who does like trail running. He did like a 31-hour trail run or something like that. It was just torture to me. I would never. This is the opposite of what I want. But he is very good at just grindy tasks. He finds joy in this approach of what you described, basically, like grinding it out, like grinding your way to success. And he is fucking successful. Like he is like financially definitely more successful than I am, but it just looks miserable to me. Looks miserable to me. And the sport that I like is basically like weightlifting, bodybuilding, where you have like short bursts of maximum effort and then you rest. And I really like that. Like and this is also how I'm working. Like I am able to grind, but I will grind really, really, really hard for a short period of time. And that's how it works for me, right? And so I think a lot of it is self-reflection, man.
Yeah.
Just being honest with yourself and just facing the fact that, well, like it may work in theory, but if it doesn't work for you in practice, then you need to find a different strategy.
I have the exact same mindset. Work hard and then play hard. I'm very curious because a lot of what you do right now and the exciting opportunities that you're able to work on is because of your relationship with Daniel. So can you explain again how exactly did you build up this relationship with him and how did it get to where you are right now?
Even like way when I started this whole journey, I was already really interested in spirituality and basically the path to enlightenment, let's say. So I met Daniel in a workshop, basically, and immediately I could feel like this guy is the real deal. He is serious work. He is on a similar path as what I want to do, which is rare. I never found anyone like that before. And he is quite a bit further along than I am. Like I can really learn from this guy. And so I approached him. I was like, hey, Daniel, I want to learn from you. Like I want to be your student. I don't really have much money at the time, but yeah, I have some experience in marketing. I'm studying business. Maybe I can help you out. Like maybe we can do something. And he was already kind of looking for a person like that. Almost 2 years, I worked for him for free. And we just started building these breathwork trainings. I also received the training. I received a lot of the teachings. And then as I made the jump to be fully self-employed and also the project had been taking up more, he started to become more like a business partner. And from then, like the project became really successful. We trained 12 people in the first year, 40 in the second year. And then it went like up. And now we're already at like 150 people per year, basically. And also the training got twice as expensive. Like we charge 6K now for the training. So as the project became more successful, it became more of like a business partner relationship. And also obviously we became good friends. Like he's now one of my best friends. But at first it was really just that student-teacher relationship. And I was basically offering to him what I could. When I look at the impact that my work has, because my work has a very indirect impact, right? Like I'm working through him, basically. I'm enabling him to do his work. So all the impact that I have is actually the impact that he has. But every time I really look at it and ask myself, like, hey, like, is this the impact that I want to have? I immediately see, like, fuck yeah, this is the impact that I want to have. He is doing very legit work. I think that his breathwork training is the best one in the German market right now. Although now it's more like a businessy job kind of thing. At first it was just service. But still, I derive a lot of meaning from pushing this work forward.
Well, that's a fantastic story. I like how you just just approached them simply and basically offered what you could, but also clearly knew that this was someone that you wanted to work with more and learn more from. And I bet you didn't expect everything that would come afterwards, but that's it's so.
Oh.
But sometimes you just have to knock those doors and see what happens.
It goes back to that point that you made earlier, right? About knowing your values and self-reflecting and also being serious about them. Because like in that moment, obviously, I was kind of scared to approach that guy after the workshop and be like, hey, I want to be your student. I'm sure I can find many other examples where that led to success. I just was clear about what's important to me and what I wanted. And I was just willing to pull the trigger in the right moment. When I see the door open, kick it in and and walk through and be assertive with the opportunities that you see. There is some luck involved, but these opportunities will arise for you. The point is less about whether the opportunity will arise for you, because it will, just by random, just statistical necessity, basically. The question is, when the opportunities arise, will you recognize that this is the thing now? This is the moment, and now you need to act. And that was always something that I was able to do because I had such an intuitive sense, as we talked about earlier, for what I want when I see it.
Yes, that's so important. One thing that helps me with the courage and the overcoming this part where you're scared is knowing the reward. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, of course, to approach this person or ask this or whatever. But when you know this is something I really want, that this could lead to all these great possibilities, again, the cost of it seems small by comparison. The risk seems small by comparison.
Rejection really isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Once you do sales, like, that point becomes very clear, but even before that, it's just not a big deal. Like, even if he had said no, it would have been like totally okay. Totally okay. What wouldn't have been okay is missing the chance. That would have sucked big time.
This is such a great conversation, Nico. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all your amazing story and your wisdom and everything that you've learned so far to inspire us and find something like that for ourselves. If people want to find you, learn more about what you do, where can they go?
So, like I said, I gave up on social media. I still have an account. It's at nicosmat.official. If you want to contact me, you can contact me there, but you won't see any posts probably. More of my work is now centered around the Daniel Allen project. So daniel-allen.com is the website, and the Instagram is at Daniel Allen Breath. I will be there between the lines, although you probably won't see my face. But of course, highly recommended to check out Daniel's work, which is also all in German, by the way, though.
Thank you so much, Nico. I am very curious to see what you build out of this project and how it continues. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.